in terms of the ratio trading, there's a lot of people talking about ratios, and the first 2 days when there's a launch, you might be able to get some good deals or get some not good deals. Are you a fan of the ratio trading? Is there a specific plan that you have for when Pulsechain launches that you would want to share?
Oh, no, not that I want to share, but I think I already shared it, right? I mean, so it's a couple different things going on. So first off, don't be surprised if the time frame isn't what we think it's going to be. Would love it to be 2 days. That's great. So just be aware that things may move faster. What's advantageous to that time frame is the potential to do the swaps at no reporting requirement. I mean, maybe it's a reporting requirement, but it's at $0, right? So if you want to degen your little heart out, you could, with zero, dollars, right? Now, that being said, it does offer a huge opportunity for somebody to, to reassess their positions in that ecosystem and kind of like work it out. So if you were thinking you wanted whatever the numbers are, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, over there at $0, that's pretty straightforward to do. But because you don't have to worry about all that's going on. But there's going to be some volatility risk, right?
Yeah.
And it's a three-way game at least. And I think that my sense is Pulse is going to go through the roof ratio-wise, while Hex plummets and PulseX plummets. And so if you're on the wrong side of that ratio, you're going to get hurt. So I just urge extreme caution. Like I wouldn't mind swapping from Pulse to PulseX and from Pulse into Hex, but I'm not going to do that unless the ratios are useful to me. And so that means I need to understand what my ratios are, what I'm willing to do. And I think right now my feeling is, and this is very very broad, is 3-to-1 on PulseX. 3 PulseX to a Pulse is
Yeah.
probably in the range. A lot of people talked about that, and I think it's a little bit different figuring out the Hex. But I think anything where you can pay 100 or less Pulse per Hex, probably a pretty good deal. But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. So that's the thing I say is that, like, there's no way of knowing what a good ratio is because you don't know what the USD is going to be. So I wish I could have a time machine. I wish Maddie would give me that damn DeLorean, and I'd go see what they're all trading at, and then I could know what a good ratio is. But I just think it's like it's a gamble. I think it's very very silly, but maybe I'll degen a little bit.
Yeah, we'll see. I think whatever it is, you should have it pre-planned in your head and just go with it. And if you're not sure, just don't take any action. But
Yeah.
because I think that anytime because it's gonna be the equivalent of selling bottoms,
Yeah.
buying tops. Just because the ratios go out of kilt doesn't mean they'll stay there, right? And so you might have been better off just taking no action at all. So it really depends on what you're trying to do. And the reason I brought it up the way I did is many of us had no idea there was going to be more than one sacrifice. So the sacrifice was for Pulse, right? So then afterwards, many, as we saw, many more people came into Pulse to get Pulse. Came into PulseX to get PulseX. And so you end up with all this other money in the PulseX, but those guys couldn't get any Pulse. So immediately, there's always been a lot of chatter about getting Pulse for PulseX, right? And then once that closed, then the chatter was, well, how do you get involved? We'll get Hex
Yeah.
or some other token and swap it in. So you have these large portions of people who went into PulseX with the idea to get Pulse and went into Hex with the idea to get Pulse and PulseX. And so, yeah. So I don't think anybody, except for a few, went into Pulse or PulseX with the idea they were going to get Hex, because you could have already gotten Hex. right? So that wasn't the idea.
Yeah.
And so I think at least in that angle, I think there's going to be there'll be net sellers of Hex for a while for sure.
Yeah, I like what you said also, that you think that Pulsechain is gonna skyrocket in the ratios, because I mean there's no way of knowing, but like there are things we know, and we know that a lot more people got into PulseX than Pulsechain, and those people didn't get Pulse and they want Pulse, so like it only
Mm.
really makes sense that Pulse Chain is probably going to be the ratio winner. Does that mean that you should be buying Pulse X and P Hex uh, on day 1 and 2 as a sort of counter trader?
Well, if that's the direction the ratio goes, it might make sense.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And then that whole thing comes to mind too. Like I don't know what's going to happen with this stuff, because look at what happened to us with us. Look, I've watched pretty carefully with POW and Fair, and to see, because I have a hex stakes over there and just managing those. But it didn't take very long for the USDC and other stables to get totally drained, right? Because they weren't worth anything over there.
Mhm.
And they just totally drained right out. And I think you're going to see something like that with all these tokens and whatnot on Pulse. So I don't know how much your crow is going to get you.
Yeah.
I don't know how far your chilies are going to spread. There's just only so much. That's another token.
Yeah. If there's like thin
Um,
liquidity, you're going to be facing an uphill battle.
yeah, and so we'll have to see. Yeah.